Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have House grinds to a halt as GOP tries to shut down Epstein votes from Axios.com, posted by CH4Locks, and that's a cross post from the Moderate Politics subreddit. And yeah, of course, Reddit's always going to be either, when it's not being Orange Man bad, it's always going to be Republicans bad. But it's not all Republicans. There are some good Republicans who wanted to release the Epstein files, like Thomas Massey. But of course, on Reddit, they have to make everything into a partisan issue because you're not allowed to find common ground with the outgroup at all, or because they always have to keep us divided. That's why they always push stuff like identity politics or Trump, because back in in the early 2010s, the Tea Party pretty much said big business or big government is the one who's controlling us, running our lives. And the Occupy Wall Street pretty much comes to the same conclusion, except they say big business is the one who's controlling us, running our life. But it's often that, as libertarians know, big business and big government are often joined at the hip, and they're both ruled by the same elite class. And as George Carlin famously said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. This Epstein stuff, it shouldn't be seen as partisan, but it has to be pushed as partisan by sources like Axios to keep people divided, instead of so they won't rise up against the elite class that rules over them. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Trump goes full fascist. Whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people, from RollingStone.com, posted by Donald Key. And that's a cross post from the No Shit Sherlock subreddit. And yeah, of course, Reddit's always going to say that the Orange Man is going full fascist. It seems like they've shared this exact headline for every single day for the past 10 years. And yeah, if you want to call Trump a fascist, I guess you could have an argument for that. But it's like the boy who cried wolf. When you cry, we say he's a fascist every single day for the past 10 years. Eventually, that word isn't going to mean anything. Plus, you just because you don't like Trump because he's a fascist doesn't mean what about Obama and Biden? They were arguably fascists as well, but Reddit doesn't care about that because they're members of the in-group rather than the out-group, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, how do we change the perception about Oakland? What is the libertarian solution? Posted by JStocksQQQ, and that's a cross post from the Oakland TA subreddit. How do we change perception about Oakland? And that post says, despite the public criticality and politics of Tennessee, Nashville takes the top spot of America's favorite cities. Oakland's at the bottom of the list, only slightly better than Detroit and Bakersfield. Weren't the same big as Bakersfield, for goodness sake. Certainly things are better in the past year, but chronic homeless camps, sideshows, dirt bikes recklessly taking over streets, trash dumping and littering, assaults and burglaries make headlines, and lack of enforcement of critical and even simple traffic laws, red light and stop sign running, speeding, missing license plate, illegal tinting, excessive noise from vehicles, etc. lets bad actors know they will likely not be caught or held accountable, and they link to the poll that they said that they said from YouGov to YouGov Americans' Favorite Cities National Tennessee poll. Then they have, Mayor Lee made a lot of promises. Those of us who know Oakland is and can be so much better than this are doing our part. That this time next year we'll be able to let her know if she kept those promises or not. I'd certainly like to see us above El Paso, Texas. And yeah, my thoughts on that are I would say Oakland is already very much a libertarian city. Just because the libertarian position is, if they want to form chronic homeless camps, sideshows, dirt bikes recklessly taking over streets, trash dumping and littering, assaults and burglaries, if people want to justify all that, I personally want to justify all that. But ultimately the libertarian position is, if people want to justify all that stuff, as long as they aren't hurting anyone else, that's on them. Personally, it just goes to show you that I personally wouldn't move to Oakland, but if you're living in a shitty city like that, a lot of the voters there vote for stuff like that, and as Arthur Fleck famously said, you get what you fucking deserve. So I personally wouldn't live there, but I think in a lot of ways, a lot of cities really are libertarian these days. They got very hands-off approach to stuff like law enforcement and all that. personally, I think the libertarian position is if you want to try fixing up, that's fine. But if people would still justify it, they justify regardless. Personally, I think maybe if you want to try fixing it up, maybe getting a local militia together, maybe that would work. I don't know. Personally, I think the libertarian position is, if you don't care if you don't care for all that stuff, I just move out. But if you want to try fixing it up, you could try fixing it up as well. Justify whatever you want to, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. But with that being said, I personally don't really go to a lot of these, progressive cities because, they're shitholes like Oakland or Philadelphia, which is out by me. And, personally, I would just stay out in the suburbs. No reason to really go to the cities when when they pretty much legalized all crime because the people with the quote unquote correct skin color are doing it. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have breaking: Trump named in multiple documents related to Epstein sex trafficking. WSJ reports from CNBC.com, posted by Genji. And yeah, personally, I'm not too surprised about that. But with that being said, as I said earlier, the media is framing this as a partisan issue. Well, it really shouldn't be a partisan issue. There are tons of elites from both branches of the Uniparty involved, but they only seem to care that the orange man is involved. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, guys, Trump reduced drug prices by 1,000%, and that's posted by CH4 Locks, and that's cross-posted from the Facepalm subreddit, and that looks like a tweet from Bo Loud and breaking. President Trump just announced he's reducing drug prices by over 1,000%. We will have reduced drug prices by 1,000%, 1,100, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400, not 30 or 50%. God bless President Trump. And that looks like a video attached of him saying that announcement. And yeah, personally, Reddit, this seems like something that Reddit would like, but since the orange man's doing it, Reddit has to be against it. If Bernie was the one saying this, Reddit would love it, but since it's the orange man, Reddit has no values other than orange man bad at this point, pretty much. So yeah, if Reddit's suddenly going to care about the free market in regards to healthcare, I guess, because orange man bad. And yeah, just because you don't like Orange Man doesn't mean you can't agree with anything he says. It's the famous expression: "A broken clock is right twice a day." Personally, I don't think the government should be interfering in healthcare at all. But if they want to justify doing that, I guess that's on them. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Alligator Alcatraz controversy comes to Texas as Cornyn backs new facility from Fox4News.com, posted by FlimsyOwl5563. And yeah, personally, I don't really care for government prisons, but if they want to justify opening up a new prison like Alligator Alcatraz, that's on them. They have the resources to justify whatever they feel like, pretty much, instead of the legal monopoly on the use of force. And yeah, personally, I think the libertarian position is we should go with more privatized prisons rather than state-run prisons, because ultimately the libertarian solution is privatization rather than government centralization. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have FYI, posted by Ragnar OKXG, and that's a post from Daryl Pooley on, I think, X, and he says, in relation to the Epstein files, why didn't Biden release the Epstein files? The Epstein records were sealed by a judge until after Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. They weren't unsealed until January 2024, so no, Biden couldn't release what was legally available. Biden didn't run a cult. He left the DOJ operate independently, unlike Trump, who demands loyalty oaths and treats every agency like his personal operatives. And no Democrat ran a platform promising to release the Epstein files. Trump did, then blocked them. And yeah, personally, I think that's just kind of making some excuses for the Democratic Party. Joe Biden was there for 4 years. He had every ability pretty much to release the Epstein files, despite what this guy says, but he didn't, and that just goes to show you, there really are just two sides of the same shitty coin. Then we have Pal corrects Trump on live TV, posted by Donald Key, and that's a cross-post from the Fluent and Finance subreddit. It looks like a clip from Fox News, I guess. Now Trump meets with Powell at Federal Reserve. And yeah, personally, I think it's interesting. Reddit, they usually hate anyone that Trump appoints, but Trump appointed Powell, and now Powell's correcting him, so they love him. But, it just goes Reddit has no values other than orange man bad at this point. And yeah, I personally don't care for Powell, but, Trump was the one who appointed him in the first place. Now he says he's the worst thing ever. It just goes to show you that, Trump will just flip on whatever he feels like, and he just doesn't really have any principles other than he's great and rile everyone up. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Granarchy 1, they grow up so fast, posted by Baton 13, and that's a cross post from the comics subreddit. And of course, yeah, where the comics subreddit is a huge shit lib central on the Reddit's already full of shit libs stuff. This one's even really bad. And yeah, so it says, the comics says, Granny, can I go fight fascists outside? And the Granny says, sure, sweet, let's get you dressed. When fighting the bourgeoisie, dress appropriately, wear a scarf that can hide your identity and double as a face mask when wet. Wear neutral, unidentifiable clothing that can't easily be grabbed and to keep your hair up too. Dress in layers in case they start tear gassing you. And she says, K. And they say, when you stand for the proletariat, system response to the police force, be sure to be prepared. Travel in groups, have an escape plan. No riot control tactics, bring a helmet, yada yada yada. And then you go already fight some fascists, and then yeah, it's of course Reddit. They hate masks and dressing up extreme for protest when the feds like ICE do it, but when they do it, it's completely fine. And that just goes to show you, Reddit has no values other than we're good, the outgroup is bad, and eventually you just get tired of it after a while. Next we have ending crime and disorder on America's streets. EO order institutionalizing of the in-house from whitehouse.gov, posted by Swan Pinky Dan. That's across from the law subreddit. And yeah, of course, a lot of people don't really care for homeless people everywhere. But, if the government wants to fix that, I think they should be able to. But I do think it's authoritarian to remove them without their consent. But that being said, as we talked about in the Oakland post earlier, some people do want to fix up their cities rather than just leave them to rot. And I personally think the libertarian position is let the cities rot if the people living there want it to rot. But if you want to justify fixing it up, that's cool too. But, ultimately people will justify regardless of whatever they want to do, I guess. Then we have Trump's deal with Japan is another loser for Americans. In other words, it will be cheaper to import finished cars from Japan than it will be to import the steel, aluminum, and other parts necessary to build cars in the United States. From Reason.com, posted by CH4Locks, and that's crosspost from the We the Fifth subreddit. And yeah, of course, I don't really care for tariffs and all that, but Reddit, I'm sure if Joe Biden was doing this, they'd think it would be the greatest win for the American industry ever, but since Trump's doing it, they have to be against it since Orange Man bad. Then we have Trump reminds everyone he has the legal authority to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell, posted by CH4Locks, and that's crosspost from the law subreddit, and looks like that's him saying it, I guess, in a clip from Fox News. And yeah, as I said earlier, Trump's much more a member of them than he is of us. He's much more a member of the in-group than he is in the out-group. As George Carlin famously said, big club, you ain't in it. And yeah, just because Reddit, I don't really care for a lot of Reddit's orange man bad circle jerking doesn't mean they can't be correct. Broken cloaks, circle clocks, right twice a day, as I said earlier. Just because I'm personally kind of tired of Orange Man bad doesn't mean that he isn't actually bad. He's much just like there were other elites like Obama Obama and Biden who came before him. And yeah, it just goes to show you how that they can justify, they can pretty much do whatever they want and no one will hold them accountable since everyone's too busy at each other's throats. But ultimately, I think Trump does need to be held accountable, but sadly, I don't think that day is coming anytime soon. They'll never hold him accountable. They might look like they are, just like like during the lead up to the last election when he was getting indicted and had a mugshot and was in the courtroom and all that. But it's all just theater. They'll never hold themselves accountable because they are the ruling class and we are the subservient class. And until people start taking action, that's not going to change anytime soon, I don't think. And yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.